Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We're tackling a topic I know a lot of you have been eager to explore, the world of subcontracting in SAP MM. Specifically, how to make it work efficiently.
Absolutely. And, there's no better way to master this
Yeah,
than by getting hands-on with creating subcontracting purchase order right in the system.
perfect. Using the good old ME21N transaction. Right. But before we jump in and start clicking away, let's make sure we've got all our ducks in a row. What are some of those must-have prerequisites? The things we got to have set up in SAP before we even think about creating the order.
You're spot on. Think of it like this. You're laying a solid foundation. So first off, for whatever you're sending out to be subcontracted, whether it's the finished product or just a component, it needs a specific setting in its material master.
Okay, so we're talking about that material master record.
Right. And you need to activate this special procurement key for subcontracting. You'll find that in the MRP2 view using transaction MM02. This tells SAP, hey, this material isn't being made in-house or bought directly. It's going out for some work.
Gotcha. So the system knows this material is going to be handled differently. What about the company doing the work for us? What do we need to set up on their end?
They need to be set up as a vendor, a source of supply for that specific subcontracted item. We handle that through either a source list, that's transaction ME01, or a quota arrangement.
Ah, so either one can work.
Yeah, depending on how your company is set up. But if you're sticking with the source list and not using quotas, there's a little check box you need to make sure is ticked, the MRP record indicator. This is key for making sure they're considered during the planning runs.
So that makes them an active player in the MRP game. Now, earlier you mentioned purchasing info records and agreements playing a role here. How do those fit into the picture?
Good catch. You see, deep in the system's configuration, the IMG as we call it, there's a whole area dedicated to external procurement. And under the MRP settings there, you absolutely need to have the indicator for purchasing info record agreement activated.
Oh, okay. I'm starting to see how all these pieces connect. So we've got the material set up, the vendor in the system, and the right configuration in place. How does SEC know when we actually need a subcontracting order?
That's where the planning magic comes in. When there's demand for that finished product, either from a sales order or another production order.
Right, so there's a need somewhere down the line.
Exactly. That's when the planning process kicks in. It looks at everything and says, okay, to meet this demand, we need to send this material out for subcontracting. And it generates either a purchase requisition, specifically with item category L, that stands for subcontracting, or a planned order, which is basically a heads up that subcontracting is needed.
I see. So it's kind of like, hey, system, this is what needs to happen. Get the ball rolling.
Precisely. And if it creates planned order first, that then gets converted into a purchase requisition. But the key here is that the purchase requisition will always have item category S.
Okay, S for subcontracting. Got it. So we've got this request hanging out there, and I assume this is where the actual PO creation comes in ME21N.
You got it. Time to roll up our sleeves and actually create that subcontracting purchase order. So you launch ME21N, and the first thing you do is enter your subcontractor's vendor code. Then you'll want to select the right purchase order type. Some systems just call it subcontracting, while others might have a specific code. Then you add the material, the one that needs work, and the quantity.
All right, so far so good. Pretty straightforward. But we're not sending them an empty PO, right? We're supplying them with components. So how do we tell the system what materials they're getting?
This is where it gets interesting. So you select that item in the PO, go into the item detail view, and click on the Material Data tab. You'll find the Component Overview screen. That's your playground for listing all the raw materials and their quantities.
So in a way, we're almost building a mini BOM within the PO itself, like a little recipe of what they're getting.
That's a great analogy. And if you do happen to have a bill of materials defined for that subcontracted item, the system can often pull those components in automatically. And, if the BIOM changes later on, there's a handy new Pack-a-BOM explosion function to update the component list in the PO. Just keep in mind, this will overwrite anything already there.
Good to know. Anything else that tends to trip people up when they're creating these subcontracting POs?
Absolutely. Double, triple check that the raw materials you're listing will actually be available for your vendor before you save that order. Trust me, it can save a lot of headaches later on. Also, notice that the delivery address on the PO will default to your subcontractor's address, and make sure that subcontractor indicator is checked. That little box ensures that when the finished goods are returned, they're initially posted to the subcontractor's stock.
Okay, that makes sense. I can see how this whole process really keeps things organized and transparent. So just to wrap things up, What would you say are the biggest advantages of using subcontracting purchase orders like this?
Well, for one, it gives you that clear audit trail. You know exactly what materials went to which subcontractor for a specific job. No more guessing games. And it makes managing the stock you've provided to them super easy. Plus, when it comes to invoicing, everything is crystal clear and straightforward.
It sounds like a much smoother operation overall, and I imagine all of this is reflected in our SAP system as well.
100%. You can see that item category and special procurement type right in your stock requirement lists and MRP lists. And here's the cool part. The demand for those raw materials, those components, will show up as special dependent requirements. You can usually spot them with a label like deprec.subc, which stands for Dependent Requirements for Subcontracting. And just like regular material demands, you can adjust these if needed. The whole flow is traceable, from the initial purchase request, often with a document type like DA, to the purchase order, which might have a code like CDESTR. All the details live in segments like the EDS segment.
Wow, this has been incredibly insightful. It's clear just how vital these subcontracting purchase orders are for anyone running a tight ship in SAP MM when it comes to outsourcing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Understanding this process inside and out gives you so much more control and visibility over those external manufacturing operations. And that translates to smoother, more efficient processes overall.
Absolutely. And on that note, here's a little food for thought as we wrap up. We've talked about how crucial it is to have the right materials at the right place at the right time for your subcontractors. But in today's crazy world of supply chains, what are some out-of-the-box ways you can track and manage those component movements even better? Maybe it's time to dive into some of those advanced inventory management tools or explore those vendor collaboration functionalities that SAP MM offers. That's something worth exploring further. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into subcontracting. Until next time.